Hey there, Sparkrock community. It's time for another Sparkrock Ed HRP release, this time version 5.2.2614. This release brings a mix of usability improvements, payroll updates, and EDAS enhancements, all designed to make everyday tasks easier, faster, and more intuitive. So in this video, we're going to introduce a new pay statement option, review usability improvements across staff management and payroll, and for British Columbia customers, walk through enhancements to the EDAS interface. Let's get started. In previous releases, we introduced a new format for pay statements, but there was one catch. It was only available for British Columbia customers because it was designed to be compliant with the British Columbia Employment Standards Act. Well, we decided that since so many employees found the new pay stub format so much better, there was no reason to limit it to just British Columbia. So now the new pay stub format is available to anyone who wants to enable it. The enhanced statement has the employee's name and employer information on each page. The earnings section is more descriptive. Information is hidden when not used. And there's a new time bank summary section, amongst other changes. This feature is controlled through a feature setting so teams can enable it when they're ready. The setting is under System, Settings, Site Configuration, and at the bottom there's an option for Use Enhanced Pay Statement. Now it's off by default, so your pay statements will remain exactly as they are now until you choose to enable it. We've made several improvements in staff management to provide better visibility and consistency. On the Development tab in Staff Management under Appraisal Maintenance, there's now a performance rating column directly in the grid. This makes it easier to review and compare employee performance without needing to open individual records. We've also improved layout consistency by keeping the teacher certification and ECE registration fields aligned together across all provinces, since generally you'll be entering or working with them together. We've also changed the label of those fields to match the appropriate terminology based on the province. So Ontario users will see Ontario terminology, Manitoba will see Manitoba, and so on. See the release notes for a list for each province. On the Compensation tab, users can now view a compensation summary by position. In a previous release, we added a row to give additional information, but now we've taken it a step further and added a collapsible row for each position that an employee has. Now let's take a look at the new Hire Wizard, which we've enhanced to capture more complete and accurate employee information during onboarding. Additional fields have been added, along with improvements to the overall flow. For organizations working with temporary social insurance numbers, there's now support for capturing a social insurance number expiry date. This field is conditionally required when a social insurance number starts with 9, which means it's temporary. This helps ensure compliance and reduces follow-up work later. By the way, by popular request, all across the Sparkrock Ed HRP application, we've corrected the abbreviation SIN to have periods now. In addition, fields like the OCT registry number and the ECE registry number are now grouped together and positioned logically within the flow, so you don't have to click around the screen. And these labels will change depending on the province. Advanced search has been expanded to make it easier to find the right employee records. You can now search using additional information fields like middle name and previous surname, and there's also a new date of birth search, including the ability to search within a date range. This is especially helpful when narrowing down results in larger organizations or when working with partial information. In payroll, we've added new message log warnings to highlight situations where accumulators are still open but linked to closed groups or positions. This helps catch potential issues earlier. And we made improvements to payroll to make employee information easier to read and more consistent across the system. On the basic employee data screen, fields like location, employee group, and activity now display using a consistent code and abbreviation format. This means that instead of seeing just a code or a description, users will now see both together, giving clearer context at a glance and reducing the need to interpret values manually. And we've applied this same format in employee search results grids. For British Columbia customers, we've made a series of enhancements to the EDAS interface to simplify setup, reduce navigation time, and make configuration easier to manage at scale. So first, the EDAS setup page under Board Control, EDAS Setup. First, the EDAS setup page has been redesigned with a card-based layout and structured sections. So instead of working through a long, continuous page full of text boxes, settings are now grouped logically, making it easier to understand what each section controls and where to make changes. Selecting values in EDAS setup has also been improved. There's a new multi-code selector that allows you to select, search, and manage multiple values more efficiently within a single control. This reduces repetitive clicking and makes working with larger sets of configuration values much faster and more intuitive. Now, to help users find what they need more quickly, we've introduced global search and filtering across the EDAS setup page. So instead of manually scanning through the sections, you can now jump directly to specific settings or narrow down results instantly, which is especially helpful in more complex configurations. We've also improved the connection between setup and reporting. You can now go straight between the EDAS setup pages and using the Generate Report button, going to the EDAS reporting page, and you can select the Back to Setup button to go back to setup. So no need to go navigating through menus anymore. Managing EDAS setup across districts is now much more efficient. You can now export configuration settings from the EDAS setup page and then import them into another environment. This helps reduce manual rework, ensures consistency, and supports smoother implementations and testing cycles. And finally, going back to the EDAS reporting page, we've now redesigned it to make it more focused and easier to use. So now instead of having to work through a long list of fields, you start by selecting just two key inputs, the academic year and the reporting period. Once these are selected, the system automatically populates the start date and end date for you, while still letting you adjust them if needed, of course. We've also made reporting actions clearer by separating them. So now the submit action generates your main EDAS report, while the generate action lets you run validation reports based on your selected parameters. Both actions stay disabled until the required inputs are entered, which helps prevent mistakes and ensures your report is ready to run. Speaking of validation, you can also choose from a list of validation reports directly on the page, making it easier to verify your data before submission. And you can see now that I've selected the validation report, the Generate button becomes active. So together, all these enhancements make EDAS easier to navigate, faster to configure, and more efficient to use, whether you're setting it up for the first time or maintaining an existing configuration. All right, that's a wrap on Sparkrock Ed HRP version 5.2.2614. You can see that this release really focuses on usability, data visibility, and modernizing key areas like EDAS to help your teams work more efficiently every day. So be sure to review the release notes for full details, and thank you so much for watching.